Randy Smallwood heads royalty and streaming company Wheaton Precious Metals and is chair of the World Gold Council. Randy, welcome back to Kitco.
Always a pleasure, Michael. Good to see you.
Randy, you had a little bit of weather as well as some other issues that dropped production this quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Salobo's had a couple of string of tough quarters in a row, and I think it probably got about as bad as it could have in the second quarter. So it's forced us to adjust guidance. That combined with Stillwater, where we some of the floods. I think everyone saw what happened at Yellowstone Park. Well, just downstream of that is the Stillwater operations, and so they had impact in terms of their own production. So the combination of it has definitely impacted our forecasts for 2022 production. We did finally get down to Salobo in June of this year, and I can assure you a site visit is way better than a virtual visit in terms of understanding what's going on at a mine site. So we're pretty comfortable with our adjusted guidance, our adjusted forecasts, but felt we had to get it out there for our shareholders to make sure they understand what's going on.
Rio Tinto and its Fenix project are in your portfolio. The project couldn't get its environmental permits. What's the options for the company going forward, Randy?
Yeah, it's Rio 2, not Rio Tinto.
Sorry.
There's a big difference in those companies.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been a bit shocked, and I think the entire industry's been a bit shocked at how Chile has turned in the last really since the change in power. 6 out of the last 8 mining expansion or application new build construction permits have been denied, and it's a little bit surprising, especially considering we were very comfortable. We've studied everything that Rio 2 did in terms of moving that project forward, and we felt that they were very well positioned to get the permit going forward. So there was some deficiencies identified. We're in discussions with Rio 2 to find out how we can move forward. It's really about sort of expanding some information that's already in there, wanting a bit more additional information versus deficiencies. It's expanding what's in there. So we're talking with them to understand the plans forward. The asset itself is a good project that we think has great capacity to expand and to grow beyond its current plans. But let's get it built first. And so it's always been one of the things we pride ourselves in at Wheaton is just making sure that we work with our partners to try and find ways to provide that support. So we'll stay tuned on that one.
Silver miner Alexco Resources was acquired by Hecla, which ended your streaming arrangement. I assume there was the breakup fee, Randy, that was paid to Wheaton. I was just wondering, how does this thing work? I assume that Wheaton did make money in this, but I guess in your business, it's always preferable to add ounces.
Well, and it didn't force the end of the stream. It was all negotiated.
Oh, okay.
We with Alexco and with Hecla to try and find a way to move this forward. Hecla was interested in the asset, but it does need a lot of capital. They're going to basically have to shut it down and reinvest into this mine to build up the infrastructure to try and get just a better support. And Hecla's got deeper pockets than what Alexco ever had in terms of being able to build up that base infrastructure. We had a lot of discussions with Hecla about continuing the stream, about modifying the stream, about expanding our reach in terms of the stream. But in the end, they came at us with a price that we couldn't turn down. Everything's got a value. We just looked at it and we realized that $135 million. We paid $50 million for that stream back in 2008. We've received about $50 million in silver from that mine already. And we've just sold it back for $135 million. So well over 300% on the initial investment. And we just think that when we looked at the plan going forward that Hecla was going to have to put in place to move Keno Hill into profitable production, and looked at the $135 million amount, we just felt the best solution was to step back, take the money, and find another place to invest that where we can do a better job delivering returns to our shareholders.
Just note also is that Hecla's had a bit of a turnaround also with its Lucky Mine down in the U.S. So, maybe they can take what they've learned there and also apply it up to Keno Hill. How is Hudbay's Rosemont doing? It also had a little bit of legal issues, but it looks like that's resolved.
Well, it's not fully resolved. They still don't have the permits on the Rosemont side, but what they're doing is moving forward on Copper World, which is the privately owned lands that they own. And Copper World is all new ounces to us, but it's within our area of interest. And so So again, one of the reasons we had to update our long-term guidance, especially the 10-year guidance, which is when we see the Rosemont / Copper World coming into play, is that the current plan that Hudbay has in place is to move forward on the Copper World side on the private lands while they continue to work forward on hopefully getting federal permits down there in terms of moving, the project in. It's a bit painful to watch because there's definitely inefficiencies. The most profitable way to develop that would be to move Rosemont into production and have Copper World as an ancillary support to sort of supplemental feed into the overall operation. But with the challenges that we continue to see in Arizona, in the United States, where we see at the same time initiatives on greening the environment being passed by Congress today, they can't permit a mine in Arizona, a good solid mine that would produce some of the greenest, cleanest copper in the world. We've been waiting we haven't been, but the companies and the owners have been waiting close to 20 years for the permit now at Rosemont, the federal permit. At least Hudbay's got a path towards production down there, but it does mean it's going to be less ounces on an annual basis for us than what we were originally expecting from the first Rosemont. The ounces haven't gone anywhere. In fact, it's extra ounces, but they'll be coming early. And it was one of the bigger factors in terms of adjusting our 10-year guidance.
Any other production highlights for Wheaton going forward, Randy?
Well, we did have good success on both Antamina and Penasquito, and we've seen on the silver side. In fact, we're slightly ahead of our own forecast over the quarter. So really, the weakness that we had in our portfolio was the gold production from Salobo, gold and palladium from Stillwater, and cobalt from Voisey's Bay. Voisey's Bay. A little bit behind in terms of bringing in the higher grade underground feed. And so we're starting to see lower grades coming from the remnants of the open pit while they try and get the underground up and running. But overall, good performance from Newmont at Penasquito, good performance from all the joint venture partners down at Antamina, and just not enough to offset the weakness in the other operations.
What's the sustainability-linked revolving credit facility, Randy?
Well, we took our $2 billion revolver and attached on basically, and there's 3 different KPIs that sort of drive how we perform on it. And we just think that it makes sense to have that incentive in terms of the cost of our capital linked to our performance on the sustainability side. And when you sit and look at where we are at Wheaton, we earlier this year committed to net zero by 2050, including Scope 3. And for us, Scope 3 emissions relate to our partners' operations. So we definitely have some work to do. But it's work that's required. It's work that we as a planet, we as a society need. And so we've set up and established a fund that's now exploring opportunities to help our partners. One of the beauties of our business is that most of our funding goes into helping fund development during the mine construction process. And if we can help our partners make better decisions with respect to how they source their power, what type of equipment they buy. Sometimes, and especially if you're dealing with single asset development companies, they have to take sort of the cheapest path because capital is so challenging to get. But sometimes that's not the best decision from an environmental perspective. So if there's ways that we can help them make better decisions and ultimately have lesser impact as we deliver these essential minerals to the planet, we're going to be looking for those opportunities. And so it's exciting that we've made this commitment publicly. I mean, 2050 is a long ways off, but when I sit and look at the opportunity that we have to try and get to net zero on a including Scope 3 basis, I think it's exciting in terms of the examples that we can continue to set in the streaming and royalty space on playing a more important role in the success of our partners.
Randy, you get a unique look at a lot of different miners and a lot of different operations. What is happening right now in terms of reducing net emissions? I was talking to Chris Griffith, who's been in the news. He's the CEO of Goldfields, and they're trying to do that Yamana deal. He was talking about, they have various initiatives with renewables, but he sees a little bit of a holdup in terms of being able to get energy storage. Anything else that you see in terms of the way that miners are actually kind of taking on this challenge?
Well, it's interesting because in the gold industry, the bulk of the emissions do come from the mining process, right? Gold as a commodity has already achieved what I call circularity, which is it doesn't get wasted. We do a really good job of recycling gold. It's society values it so highly that we don't have waste. We've got that circularity as a commodity, as a material within society. So if we can continue to strive towards improving at the mining level, at the production level, it really takes the commodity to a different level to so many other commodities around the world in terms of how we do that. And I will say the bulk of emissions come from where do you source your power from? And the challenge that we have in the mining industry as a whole is that most of our mining operations are in rural locations. And a lot of times it's very tough to tie into a national grid or a regional grid in terms of accessing that power. And it is something that we now factor into how we select our investments. We look at that and determine, are we dealing with coal-fired power generation as some of our peers are? No, Salobo runs on hydroelectric energy. It's one of the cleanest mines in our portfolio. Are there ways, and again, it goes back to how we can help our partners build new operations or expand existing operations. Is there investments where we can perhaps source run-of-river power that will help offset the need for bringing diesel in to remote locations to run generators and such? There's lots of opportunities for us. I see it, and I see it at the World Gold Council. There's a continued commitment to try and find ways to improve, and I'm confident that we will. All I can do is sit and look at where we were 10 years ago versus today. That there's a vector that's going in the right direction, and we're going to continue on that vector.
Has inflation been tamed, Randy?
As a streaming company, we're protected. And I would argue that, given the leverage that we have in terms of a base production cost on a per ounce basis, I mean, we actually saw our cost per ounce of gold drop year over year this quarter. But our costs are fixed. They're fixed by the contract. So we take out that cost risk. We don't have inflationary exposure. And so, that combined with the leverage that we provide, I really do think that in terms of investing into precious metals in an inflationary environment, there's no better way than a streaming company in terms of getting access to that protection. What we are seeing, though, is a lot of our peers, our partners, and a lot of the operating companies are suffering from inflation. You can't see iron prices, you can't see copper, you can't see fuel prices climb like this without having a downstream impact on how much it costs to build new mines, to expand existing operations, and for that matter to fund existing operations in terms of the cost of diesel and such. And so that will eventually work its way through. And I think there was a little bit of a weaker data point here earlier. I think it was yesterday that. In my eyes, one data point does not indicate a trend. I just and again, going back to the source materials that are such an important part of everything we consume as a society, I can't help but be concerned about continued inflationary pressures coming forward, even stronger, perhaps.
Lastly, you did mention it. You're chair of the World Gold Council. What's the marketing message for gold, and is it resonating, Randy?
Gold remains the strongest store of value, the strongest measure of value out there. I think the strength of gold, I think the performance of gold, there was a real push by some organizations about, the strength of crypto in this space. And, the volatility that we've seen in that space is just not reflective of a store of value. Gold remains the consistent best measure of value, the best store of value through challenging times. And so, we're excited. The price of gold, in terms of the strong US dollar that we've seen over the last 4, 5, 6 months, gold has actually performed relatively well. To be only down a couple of $100 on a per ounce basis over that period. And I really do think that we've now established a new floor, a new basement, and we're on our way back up again. That strength in the US dollar just isn't sustainable. It's of course strong compared to so many other currencies around the world. And when you look at what's happening around the world, there's a good reason why the US dollar is so strong. But can it maintain that strength? Can it keep that trend, that increasing strength relative to everything else? And I just think gold's a much better position to be in.
Randy, thanks for speaking with Kitco.
Always a pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
He's Randy Smallwood. He is CEO of Wheaton Precious Metals and chair of the World Gold Council. My name is Michael McRae, and you're watching Kitco Mining.